actually give this interesting anecdote about a conversation between Demis Hassabis. He is one of the co-founders of a company called DeepMind. It's a London-based artificial intelligence lab. And Elon Musk, I think most of you know him. He is the CEO of Tesla. So Demis was visiting Tesla, and he and Elon were sitting in a canteen having a conversation. And Elon made a comment that SpaceX, his famous program SpaceX, is the most important project on the planet because it's going to achieve interplanetary colonization, on Mars or something like that. And Hassabis replied that no, in fact, he is working on the most important project in the world, developing artificial superintelligence. So the conversation is becoming a little interesting. So Musk counters him by saying, that is the reason why we need to colonize Mars, because if AI goes rogue and turns on humanity, then Mars would be our bolt hole mechanism. And Hassabis finally replies to him that AI would simply follow humans to the Mars, right? So I think it's kind of funny, but I think if you look at the Silicon Valley and the tech industry, their perspective on AI is a little diverse. You have on one side people like Bill Gates and Steve Hawkins who are open to AI, but they want to take a very conservative approach, versus the Mark Zuckerbergs of the world. They are much more open-minded and want the full throttle, and Elon is probably sitting somewhere in between. So I think it's going to be a journey, as I said before. So the approach that the CLS team is taking to achieve this is, we are probably sitting in the middle, right? Supervision and eventually to autonomy. And the way to achieve that would probably be the way we do today, right? I mean, when we make systems today, we look at the risk, patient risk, what is the level of risk? So we have to incorporate that as we build AI and these algorithms. Another way to look at this would be the categories in the med devices, and are there any different flavors in the pharma industry that is a little bit different versus non-regulated systems, right? I mean, there are products or systems which are healthcare products, but not necessarily regulated because they don't pose the same risk to the patient as the regulated devices. So perhaps we can a little bit be more open in those type of applications and learn as we go. The other piece that I think is a challenge is technology is fast changing, right? I mean, obviously the good news is we are at a point where AI seems much more achievable versus 10 years ago. But I think the technology is changing fast. The platforms are changing, the softwares are changing. It has become much more easier in these days to connect the software, to IoTs. I mean, think about you're connecting your Pi and a kid programming using JavaScript to automate hardware. Right? So it's that easy, right? So I think we need to continuously look at how this market is evolving and continuously adapt. So it will be an interesting journey.
That's great, thank you. So Charlene, what is the perspective, or what types of challenges has the CPQA team identified?
Well, I guess our first challenge is, so what? Why are we talking about this? And while we have a number of people certainly on the call who are very excited about the possibilities and the potential, I think we need to help be change agents in our industry to help everyone envision what the possibilities are. How can we effectively use AI to move toward that future state? So there's a potential to work in a very, very different way. And so I think telling the story, understanding people's concerns and risks that are perceived, and integrating that is going to be critically important. So if you can move to the next slide, we have a few more that we've captured. So, this slide captures a few more of the challenges that we have in front of us. As with any topic, especially new concepts, we need education and to develop a common foundation or vernacular so that we can build something new and that we can bring many people along with us. Excuse me. And that is something that we are working on in in our deliverables. So we'll get to that slide in the future. But thinking about our data, it is so valuable to us. And as such, we really need to protect it. Think about cybersecurity and the risks that we have of corruption or attack. But on the other hand, we can't be stingy with it, because it is really the combination of that data with other data by which the power is really magnified. So we can't have silos, but we need to balance the protection of that data with sharing that data. You know, the next two topics, structure and cleanliness of the data, are things that we can do regardless of our AI journey and path. So when you think about structure, an example I think of is, you know, batch number. So something that's called batch number in one system, it should be the same and have the same structure as something that has a batch number in another system. And that data element, if you will, of batch number, is what really enables linkages of multiple sets of data in both of those systems, and allows that information to be joined and hopefully exploited to our advantage. Cleaning the data, think about garbage in, garbage out. We've always heard that. And quite honestly, I'm always amazed at the time necessary, not just to map data, but to clean data when we're integrating or moving to a new system or combining into a new system. So again, those are just basic tenets of good data management, but those are obviously fundamental to utilizing our data more effectively. And then we move on to connecting our data, and I say carefully because we know that there are risks in connecting data. I mean, the thing that comes to mind is the virus that the Petya virus that I think Merck had some very difficult times with. And while I'm not an expert, I understand that that was probably introduced into Merck by some joining of data from an outside source. So connecting that data has to be done in a very careful and orderly way. And then analyzing the data that we are able to collect, and the decisions or the output from that connection or leveraging of data. We can't lose sight of using, you know, human common sense. I always go back to something that I learned from one of my statistics professors, who said you just can't correlation does not necessarily mean causation. So just because there is some connection, correlation, we have to be careful regarding the conclusions that are drawn from that. And then visualization and communication of data, that can be a challenge as the types and amount of data continue to increase and analysis techniques become more complex. And then lastly, in this world of artificial intelligence, we need data scientists, and we need that skill throughout our operations. It can't just be an IT skill. That is really the foundation of a learning organization, and that skill set is going to be critical for the future.
Great, and so this is Marla. So I guess, you know, when we're looking at challenges for the overall initiative, you know, there's a lot to think about, and at least from what Charlene and Mohammed have described, I hope that everyone on the line, if you're just learning about AI, have moved from, okay, we're talking about futuristic robots, to, okay, this is actually a tool that we can use within our systems, our walls at our pharma or device companies. But you might be thinking, okay, that sounds great, but I don't have the time, the money, and the resources to do any of this. And so I'd like to just point out that, at least through this initiative, the solutions that are being developed are for free and open access. And we do it in a way that companies can crawl, then walk, then run. So, and I'll show you that in just a second. The other thing is, once you do start implementing this, even the crawl stage where you haven't implemented AI, but you're preparing for it, you can start shifting resources from managing failures to increasing data robustness. So it's not adding resources to your current systems, it's shifting where you're focusing your work based on the outcomes, which are very positive. At the end, though, if you are going to go all out and implement AI, money is needed at the end of the day. So it can either be internal, so you have the capability internally, or through outside services. So you can implement the solutions without AI as best as you can in order to reduce failures. And from that way, based on the ROI, you can cover the expenses, but your company might be so small that you don't have that luxury. I mean, you have to have the money in hand. You can't implement it first and then reap the benefits of the ROI. So there is a crawl, walk, and run mechanism that allows you to implement it in a way that's right for your company and at the right timing. So when I say crawl, walk, run, if you look at the work that these two teams are doing, some of the outputs that they've described is, they're going to be harmonizing definitions across systems. As you heard Charlene talk about, cleaning up the management of data, improving electronic searchability of data and access to the data. All of those things, even if you didn't implement AI, would be beneficial to you today. So that would be certainly in the crawl stage. Now, through the work that's being done, if we can identify those interrelationships or the correlations that Charlene was just mentioning across data systems, even without having AI, if the team that coming out of this initiative, if they generate this map for you to take to your company, you can look at those systems as humans and pull the information in the data and start looking at trends that maybe you didn't realize existed. Maybe the data is being looked at in silos today, or there's some systems you didn't think to look at because maybe they aren't GMP, but yet they impact your GMP systems and the decisions you're making. So again, you could take the information and the output and crawl with it. And then certainly if we can identify cause and effect relationships between data and the failures so that we can become predictive, that's powerful to understand even without AI. If you can identify all of the relevant data and information needed for AI programming, then if you're ready to start walking and then eventually running, you can give that to your data scientists if you happen to have them, or you can hire a consultant or get something off the shelf. And there's also open sourcing AI information out there for everyone to access beyond what we're doing at Xavier. So you can take that information and start working with it in AI once you're ready. And then the last part, outlining the steps needed for data governance, procedural changes, and human training. Again, completely needed, even if you're not talking about AI. So all of these aspects that are coming out of this work, you can implement in a way that's right for you and your organization based on the timing and the resources that you have.